NBA Courtside.
Ball goes in the air. Butler taps it. It goes to Dunleavy, who lost it out of bounds. Game over, and the Sixers are 3-0.
NBA Courtside.
We get off the bus, we go on the court, and we play.
Here's Ben Heisler and Coach Nick Hauselman.
It is episode 2 of NBA Courtside. My name is Ben Heisler. He is Coach Nick Hauselman. Coach, it has been an interesting first week of the NBA, to say the least, and I think when you look at the start of the season, you and I both predicted this, and clearly it's all over the place. Everybody can see it, but we both knew that the Sixers would be 3-0.
Absolutely. I had Michael Carter-Williams having a near quadruple-double in the first game against the Heat, without question. And also, I knew he was going to steal the ball from LeBron James 3 times. It's certainly no surprise there.
Well, here's something that I find interesting about Williams, because you and I both watched him play at Syracuse, and obviously the jump shot wasn't certainly a big part of his game, but early on in the season, he looks really improved.
He absolutely does. His mechanics look better, too. And, of course, when you have a summer to prepare and you have professional coaches and with no classes to go to, supposedly, at Syracuse, then you could do a lot of work on that. He really does. His form and mechanically, in my opinion, is very sound, and I have no reason to believe he won't shoot average to above average from three-point land.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is that I think you've seen more of an improved jump shot out of Spencer Hawes. Evan Turner is shooting the ball better, and Thaddeus Young. I think a lot of people expected Young to make the next step this year, and people were concerned about the talent around him. But this is a 17-7 guy, and that's pretty much what you expected out of him, coming and being able to play both the 3 and the 4.
You know, I'm a little bit late to the Thaddeus Young party, but what I've seen so far from this year, I'm really impressed. I like his defense for the most part. He has good anticipation and quickness. He sometimes gets a little bit lost out there with his energy, but I think he's a great component. And my only concern now is there's the incentive not to win to get back into the Wiggins sweepstakes, and so that might mean someone like Evan Turner might play well enough to have enough value that they'll get rid of him for picks or for somebody else.
So don't you wish that you were a fly in the room right now in the GM meetings over for the Sixers, that let's say they get off to this like a 7-3 start and they keep it going throughout the season, and yeah, you're looking at potential trade possibilities for Evan Turner, but if you're doing a good job and you're getting yourself in decent playoff shape and you're completely exceeding expectations, how much of an inkling do you think there is for them to say, maybe we let this go for a little bit instead of trying to trade somebody like an Evan Turner?
I think they could certainly do that and flip the season around and work with that, because it gets them experience that will continue to make them improve. And when they get Nerlens Noel back, it's almost like being in the lottery anyway for next year, because they don't think he's going to play. So it's a real interesting conundrum for them. I have to imagine they're going to have to weigh the value of that overall, because obviously one more really great franchise transforming talent could really do something big 2 or 3 years down the line.
Especially if MCW continues to improve the way that he has so far. The Phoenix Suns are another tanking team that's at 2-1 so far this year, although Dragic went down the other day. He's going to miss, I think, a game or two so far. But you take a look at teams like the Sixers now at 3-0. Phoenix is 2-1. And you're starting to see a lot of these teams that a lot of people predicted to really struggle this season get off to hot starts. How soon do you think we can start to see an adjustment by the league where the better teams are going to come out in front and the teams that we expected to do worse are probably going to get to that point? Because listen, as much as we want to believe that there's a lot of parity in the NBA, usually the best 2 teams get to the NBA Finals each year. It's just the one sport where that is most likely to happen. But when do you think we start to see more of an adjustment by the NBA at this point?
Well, interestingly enough, I feel like it's related to sort of the length of a typical college season. You got a lot of players with a lot of energy running around out there making plays. And, after about 30 games, they start to get nicked up a little bit. They kind of, get the grind of the travel, gets wears on them. And that's when you start to see a little bit of that slowdown. So I would suspect after about 30 games is when you can really look to assess what they have on their hands.
And meanwhile, on the flip side, the Bulls and the Nets are both 1-2. Particularly if you look at the Bulls, Rose continues to turn the ball over. He still looks a little bit unsure of finishing at the basket. He's going to the basket with relative ease, but it's getting to that final part of being able to make some of the shots that he's made before. I think he's struggling with. The Nets are starting to find their groove a little bit, but I think it's going to take them some time because of so many new faces there. You see both of these 2 teams turning around relatively quickly?
I feel like the Heat's defensive foundation is so strong that they're going to be in all the games they play, and it's only a matter of time until Rose, shoots. Even if, by the way, they wouldn't have lost in these games if he shot 38% instead of 29%.
And they're a shot away
so.
too, Nick, from being 0-3 if Rose doesn't make that shot against the Knicks on Thursday night.
Yeah, so I think that the Bulls will turn it around pretty quickly. I think Rose is, just certainly rusty from the 18 months off, and we'll see that be turned around as well. The Nets are again still a big conundrum to me, and it's going to be a challenge. They might not figure it out until much later in the year.
Yeah, and especially if they get themselves going in the second half. And the problem about a team like the Nets being able to sort of turn it on the second half is you have so many veteran guys that you're going to have to figure out if you're Jason Kidd and you're Lawrence Frank, how you rest some of those guys down the stretch, because if you get off to a slow start, you're going to need a lot of those games midway through the season.
Absolutely. I mean, that's going to be key, I think, for the playoff seeding is you don't want to slip too far and have to try and clamber back and expend all of your energy the last, 20 games of the season and then have nothing left for the playoffs.
On the show today, Bob Cooney, the Philadelphia 76ers beat reporter for the Philadelphia Daily News, is going to join us in just a little bit, and he's going to talk about the terrific start for the Sixers. We'll also be joined by the Hall of Fame NBA writer now with the Orange County Register, Mark Heisler. No relation, but when I have talked with him, I have occasionally joked that I'm missing a bar mitzvah gift from him. Final thought before we get into our top fives of the week. Russell Westbrook with an early surprise entrance on Sunday, and for the most part, I think there's still a little rust there, Coach, but he looked very good.
There's no question it was surprising. I think the whole thing was surprising how it went down when he had the initial knee surgery, and then it was supposed to come back, and there was a weird reason why he couldn't. So, he looks very much like the Russell Westbrook we know, and, I just don't have a lot of faith. We spent a lot of time over the last few years breaking down his game, and I just don't seem to have a lot of faith he's going to make that next step up to elite point guard status.
I certainly hope that's incorrect, because I think he needs to make that step in order for them to be a title contender, and I have Durant as my preseason MVP this year. Okay, so it's time to get into our top five of the week, and I decided to go with the first week feel-good surprise stories. Can either be teams or players. So I'm going to break them down from 5 to 1, and then Coach is going to tell me whether or not they deserve to be on the list. So number 5, it's a little bit of a reach, Coach, but I feel good about it, in particular because I talked about it. The emergence of my pick as one of the surprise stars this year, Alec Burks out in Utah. He's getting an opportunity to play meaningful minutes on a rebuilding team, averaging 18 a game, 3 assists, 3.7 rebounds. He's shooting 49%, and you look at the Hollinger's true shooting percentage, it's almost at 55%. Alec Burks is starting to look like a really nice player in the league.
Absolutely, and if you can go back into my Twitter feed from back in the spring, I had watched Alec probably for the first time on the Jazz, and I was online on Twitter saying, what is this guy? Why is he not playing more? He's got a lot of ability. He can do a lot of different things. And all the Jazz fans who came out and saying, absolutely, we've been saying this all year long, and Ty Corbin will play him. So I was on that bandwagon early. I noticed that, and I'm really happy to see that he is getting some minutes and he's actually contributing.
Yeah, and a nice fantasy pickup, too, by the way. The fourth top fantasy, or not fantasy, but top storyline surprise that I have is I think a lot of people may disagree with this, but Rockets are looking pretty good right now. They look like they're in midseason form. They're scoring a lot of points. They're distributing the basketball well. Francisco Garcia making a nice impact off the bench and making a lot of threes, and he's shooting for a high percentage. Right now, Coach, they're 3-0, and their starting point guard has been missing some time in Patrick Beverley. He'll probably come back in a week and a half.
That's true, but let's not get a little too crazy because the 2 wins they have, 2 of them are against Charlotte and Utah, right? So those are nice wins, but certainly things that aren't going to really, push them. And obviously, their goal is a championship. And if that's the case, then they're going to have to do it against much tougher competition than that. And, Dallas was a test they actually overcame as well. But
right.
I got to see them against the top 4 or 5 teams in the West before I'm even beginning to really get a handle on what they can do.
All right, and I remember you have some concerns about the Rockets and whether or not the combination with Howard and Ashik is going to work, too, if I'm not mistaken. My number 3 feel-good surprise story, the 2-1 Phoenix Suns. And not just because they're 2-1, but because Coach Hornacek's coaching them up. They're first in fast break points, 4th in points allowed, and they're also first in opponents' 3-point percentage. This is a team that for years when D'Antoni was there, and even when Gentry was there, we saw a little bit of an improved play on the defensive end. But you're starting to see more of a commitment there. And I think out in the West, a lot of times you have a tendency to just go up and down the court. The more defense you can play and more half-court sets that you can have, certainly the better for you.
I think so. I think that it's surprising, although they did beat, a Portland team that's a little bit nicked up, and they beat Utah. So again, the schedule is a little bit favorable, and they lost to OKC the other night. So they have something there. Jeff Hornacek, if you had to pick a former player that would be a good coach, he fits the bill, top of the line guy. So you have to imagine that all the things he absorbed from all the great coaches he played for, particularly Jerry Sloan, is really going to help them.
Number 2 on my list, Coach, Russell Westbrook, coming very early back from his injury for the Thunder. A nice little shot in the arm, particularly for them and also for Durant. And I thought he looked pretty good on Sunday after the knee injury. And granted, it's still very early, and he's going to have to shake off some rust. But he's integral to their success this year.
I'm really happy that he's back because no one wants to see him injured. OKC desperately needs him because the way they run their offense, it's kind of designed to have individual brilliance trump any kind of team shot creation. And so without him, it's clunky, and even with him, it's still a little clunky. But certainly against any kind of inferior talent, they're gonna succeed most of the time against that.
And then final number 1 pick for me, Coach, is the 3-0 Sixers. I don't think there's a whole lot of surprise there. MCW is playing out of his mind. He won the Eastern Conference Player of the Week award. Evan Turner is scoring. Spencer Hawes has been a nice presence both inside and out, and he can play pick and pop up top. I talked about Thaddeus Young earlier, and I think their defense is going to need to improve, but right now they're up and down tempo, especially in the East. It's a fun style of basketball to watch.
Absolutely. I mean, I have my favorite player of the I'm so fickle, I'm like a high school, prom dates. But either way, he is now my new favorite player that I have. I mean, I've gone from Alexi Spade to Chandler Parsons to Kawhi Leonard to Jimmy Butler, and I tell you, he is now the object of my my affection as far as how he plays and what he's doing out there. He plays like a veteran. He's only played 3 games, and he looks like a grizzled pro out there with some of the plays he's making. So, Philadelphia, what a nice story that is to start the season for sure.
And I'll be honest too, Coach, I thought the length would be helpful, but to be able to have a 6'7" frame like that and his athletic ability to be able to guard on the perimeter, it's been so critical. And especially you looked at the first game when he had the 9 steals. He's really impressed me on the defensive end as well.
When we coach, we don't talk a lot about sliding because it's too slow. You have to turn and run. These days, everyone's so good with the ball. I got to tell you, though, this guy's sliding and lateral quickness is off the charts. And I know he's listed his wingspan at like 6'7", and he's only 6'6", or he's 6'6", and his wingspan is 6'7". I'm not sure that's right. His arms look a lot longer. So either he's shorter than they say he is, and his arms are 6'7", or something is wacky there. But long arms, active, really just impressive.
So there you go. That's our top 5 of the week. We'll do this every time we do a show here on NBA Courtside. When we come back, Bob Cooney with the Philadelphia 76ers, their beat reporter for the Philadelphia Daily News, breaks down the 3-0 Sixers with us. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to NBA Courtside. So the 76ers are off to a 3-0 start this season, and joining us now is their beat reporter for the Philadelphia Daily News, and you can follow him on Twitter at BobCooney76. Bob, thanks so much for joining Coach Nick and I here today on Courtside, and I imagine that a 3-0 start to the NBA season is really just what you drew up.
Maybe for some teams, certainly not for this one. Surprising. And no doubt a surprising start by this team, but a young team that's shown a lot of energy and a lot of willingness to stay in games when they get behind, and then just showing a fight and a resilience that you didn't know if they had it or not, because quite frankly nobody really knows this team, because it's just a bunch of young players and different people assembled from different places.
We talk a lot about coaching and philosophy, and how vocal or how apparent is it that Coach Popovich's thumbprint is on this team?
Yeah, you know what the neat thing is about Brett Brown, I think, is he came in here, he said he had a vision for what he wanted to do, systems that he wanted to implement, and then he saw his players. And after seeing his players for a little while, he totally went in another direction. He looked at the talent that he had and decided what was best for them, and then implemented a system, which I think is great in coaching. Not to come in with a system and force it on your players no matter who you have, but look at what you have and then implementing a system. And that's exactly what he did. And he refers to Popovich an awful lot, and there's no doubt when you're a first-year coach and you have the patience to implement a system after looking at a team and the willingness to do that, that's pretty impressive to me.
And another guy that's been very impressive has been the play of Michael Carter-Williams, and he's off to a terrific start. Was named Eastern Conference Player of the Week, and the first player to earn that honor in his rookie season since Shaq in 1992. And he's scoring as a point guard as well. A lot of people knew that he was a good passer, but he scored 62 points, and that's the highest amount by our Sixers rookie since Allen Iverson did it in 96. When you look at what Carter Williams has been able to do, both on the defensive and offensive end, what has stood out to you the most?
Yeah, his confidence level is just really amazed me. I mean, his first game against the Miami Heat, he just had sick numbers. I mean, a crazy statistical line for an NBA game, let alone for a rookie. But then the next time they played was even more impressive to me. They were in Washington. The team wasn't playing well. He wasn't playing well at all. And then in the fourth quarter, he just turned things around, put the team on his back, led them to victory. That's something to be said for that for a rookie playing a bad first three quarters, and quite frankly, the team playing bad. And to see that he was willing to take big shots, that he was ready to carry the team after struggling the first three quarters, that was really impressive to me.
Has he talked a little bit about going from shooting pretty poorly at Syracuse from distance to any kind of work he might have done to shore up his mechanics? Are you aware of anything like that that's happening? Because certainly he's shooting really, really well and looks really good mechanically from distance.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a work in progress. But I talked after the Sixers took him on draft night. I called a few college coaches that played against him, and they all kind of said the same thing, that although he didn't shoot well, his mechanics weren't too bad. They were pretty easily fixable. And I know the Sixers staff has worked with him on his shot. And another thing that he has here that may be helping is he has freedom to shoot it. Coach Brown has told the guys over and over again, I don't look at shots as bad shots. Take the shots if you feel you're open. You'll know if it's a bad shot or not. But they have the freedom to shoot. And I think when you have that confidence behind you, a coach that's willing to let you pull up and shoot, that's only going to help. But I have been surprised. He's pulled up and taken some shots that I didn't think when they left his hand was a good shot. But the results were pretty good, so it was hard to argue with.
Hey, Bob, many people have sort of viewed this as a make-or-break year, I think, for Evan Turner with the new regime coming in. And he's never really been a high-percentage shooter, but the first three games, he's shooting right around 50%. What surprised you the most about his solid play so far this year?
It's funny. Before the season started, I sat down and talked with him and just about what he was hoping to accomplish this year and what the biggest thing he wanted to improve upon. And it was exactly what you're talking about, his shooting percentage. He felt like when he was taking the basketball to the basket, he was stopping short. He needed to take one extra dribble to get to the rim or to get himself near the rim in order to get better chances at power baskets. And last year and years prior, he was coming to jump stops 3, 4, 5 feet away from the basket, and then defenders could, collapse between him and the basket, and he was running into trouble. This year he's taking that extra dribble. He's going to the basket hard. That's why his shooting percentage is up, and that's why his scoring average is where it is.
Well, here's the question. Since there definitely seems to be an incentive not to win too many games, is Evan Turner playing to be traded and get the most value for him?
He's absolutely playing for a next contract, whether it be here or anywhere. I mean, there's no question about that. The Sixers decided not to pick up his option for next year, which was a little over $8 million. So he'll become an unrestricted free agent. Teams can offer them whatever they want, and the Sixers, can match it if they so decide. So no matter who he's playing for, whether it's the Sixers, whether it's another team in the NBA, he's playing for a contract for next year. And so far, so good. He says he's just going to play hard. He wants this team to do well. He wants to be a leader on this team and let the cards fall where they may. So far, so good for him. He's looked very, very good in these first three games.
My final question for you, and again, we're joined by Bob Cooney from the Philadelphia 76ers. He's their beat reporter for the Philadelphia Daily News. I've been really impressed with the way that Spencer Hawes has come about and not only been great as he can be down the low post, but he's improved his jump shot over at the high post as well. He's been a decent shooter from there, but I think he's improved so far to start the year. When you look at Spencer Hawes and his ability to play both up high and down low, is there anything particular that stands out to you about his improved play this year?
Yeah, this offense fits him. What the Sixers are trying to do is that dribble drive offense where A guy gets the ball, he tries to drive to the lane to get to the basket. If he can't, then they're looking for kickouts. And what they'll do most of the time with Spencer Hawes, because he's such a good shooter, he'll be up high around the three-point area, around the top of the key spot. He is by far the best shooter on this team. There's no question about it. And the dribble drive has worked in that they're able to draw defenders when they attack the basket. And Spencer Hawes has been able to just spot up outside and consistently hit his outside shot. He's improved there tremendously. Always has been a good shooter, but now just shoots with such confidence. I've said the word confidence so many times since we've been talking, but that's really what I think the key to a lot of these players and the key to this team is right now. Spencer Hawes has, and admittedly, he would admit himself, has been a head case in his years in the league, and he's calmed down. He's become a grown-up. He's learned to accept what he has to do for his game, and he's performing at a very high level right now.
You talk a little bit about confidence and the difference in what happened from last year and this year. Is that sort of an indictment of last year's coaching staff, or is that just sort of more a real positive on what's happening with Coach Brown now?
Yeah, I would go with the positive of now. And look, I mean, we can look at 3 games. If you want to equate this to a football season, if you're going to judge the Sixers after 3 games and how the season might go, that'd be like the equivalent of judging a football team on their first drive of the season. I mean, it's that small of a sample, as we all know. It's just a good attitude around here right now. Now, look, if this team loses a game or two and these are young kids and their heads go down, a 1 or 2 game losing streak could turn into a 10 or 12 game losing streak. You just don't know. But like I told the fans here in Philadelphia and what everybody believes around here is just ride the wave that they're going on now. Not expected. People are looking for the future. But at the same time, when you're looking for the future, you have to look at young players and see what they can do. And right now, some of these young players are showing that they might not be bad NBA players.
It's been a wonderful start to the season for the 76ers, and Bob Cooney covers them for the Philadelphia Daily News. And again, you can follow him on Twitter at BobCooney76. Bob, appreciate the time today. Thanks so much for joining us here on Courtside.
Guys, anytime. Thanks for having me.
There you go. That's Bob Cooney of the Philadelphia Daily News. Coach Nick and I will be right back in just a second. Welcome back, everybody, into NBA Courtside as our show rolls on here in Part 3. And joining us now is the Hall of Fame NBA writer. He's now with the Orange County Register along with Sheridan Hoops. And please do follow him on Twitter at Mark Heisler. Mark, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you guys?
We're good. Thanks so much for joining us today. And sort of in the first part of the show, Coach Nick and I were talking about the 76ers off to a 3-0 start, the Suns off to a 2-1 start. And initially, you'd sort of think, well, this is sort of, slightly bizarre. But as we were talking before this began, the NBA start to the season usually is bizarre.
The way I look at it is, we spend, like months, making the same old predictions and predicting that the same teams that won last year are going to win this year. And, then they throw the ball up opening night and all sorts of weird stuff starts happening. And, last year, if I remember right, Charlotte was like 10-10, and then they finished like about 12-70. There's a lot more stuff that happens than we could ever imagine. And, all the most interesting stuff is stuff we can never imagine, like the 76ers. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them finish, like 6-76.
Are you hearing stuff around the league from maybe front offices or even players? Are they surprised about the Sixers? Is that a feel-good story on the inside?
Well, I'm sure everybody's surprised. It's not long enough to be a feel-good story. The amazing thing is, and I do this as much as anything else. I play a lot of fantasy basketball, and something happens, like LeBron James has a bad game the first game, and everybody starts acting like, oh, so he's nothing anymore, or is LeBron James in a slump? We get back to kind of normal, pretty quickly. Normal for the 76. The amazing thing is Michael Carter Williams, who nobody thought could make a jump shot, and all of a sudden, he's like, one of the best players in the league, and he wasn't really expected to be a very hot rookie. He didn't play very well in the summer league. Doesn't really have a jump shot. There's holes in his game. Jumps every time he makes a pass, and all of a sudden, he's playing on the same level as LeBron. Well, I don't expect that to last, but we'll see.
Mark, can you think of a rookie in the last several seasons that has come in his first 3-4 games and has made the type of impact that MCW has made somebody similar?
Not really, and especially given the fact that there's been a lot better rookies have come in.
Right.
I think there's a lot of players have come in who'll turn out to be way better rookies. I think Oladipo is a way better player than Michael Carter Williams. Given the fact that I don't think Michael Carter Williams, is as good as what he's playing. It's really pretty amazing. But it's kind of similar to Jeremy Lin in New York. Although I think Jeremy Lin's a better player than Michael Carter Williams. But when Jeremy Williams all of a sudden had that run, in the middle of his second season, came right out of nowhere, and really serious people. Nate Silver, the great statistician, wrote a piece saying that it compared favorably to what anybody had ever done in their first 8 starts in the NBA, and that's about as long as it lasted. It was about 8 starts. So time always tells.
Well, let's pivot. If we're talking about point guards, let's talk a little bit about Steve Nash and where he is, and if you feel like he can even get his legs underneath him and get healthy to contribute positively.
Yeah, I was like everybody else. He looked terrible in the opener. He looked terrible in preseason, but and he is 39 years old, and of course, he hasn't played on athleticism ever, and in the last few years, certainly not. He looks like a YMCA player, who wandered into an NBA game and always did. The question after the opener was, is he 39 and has he had it, or, is this just does he just need to get his legs under him? I thought he looked a lot better in Game 3 in the sense that he began to resemble Steve Nash a little bit. He got in the lane and he put pressure on the defense and he got guys open shots. And then he didn't play late in the game. I think he was probably gassed. But the last game, the game they just won last night, he looked pretty good. Now, if he is still getting better and if he does get his legs underneath him, he can be reasonably close to being Steve Nash. Now, by that I mean the Steve Nash of 36, 37 years old. But that's still a really good player. And if he does that, he opens up a lot of possibilities for Lakers.
And Mark, a lot of people talked about with Dwight Howard gone, a lot of people expected that this would be a much better and improved season out of Paul Gasol, and he certainly looks good so far, averaging close to 16 a game, right around 11 rebounds. He certainly looks more comfortable from the outside. You're on the inside. What have you seen from him?
Well, it never occurred to me that he wouldn't. When he struggled last year with Dwight, I always knew it was because he was playing with Dwight. He was the one, they were going to play through Dwight. They were trying to keep him. It had to be that way. Dwight was going to get the touches. Powell was going to be the one they sent out to the corner to shoot threes, which he couldn't do at the time. Now all of a sudden he's making some threes. Powell is a really good high post center. Now, he used to be like 19 and 10. Now he's about 17 and 10. He still hasn't looked really good around the basket. He's better, or he used to be better than he's looked around the basket. But he's a really good player, and he didn't stop being a really good player when Dwight was here, but you couldn't see it. What he's doing, I knew he had that in him.
And what's happening now with Blake Griffin and the Clippers? They seem to be a little bit off kilter. Is this something that's just sort of the growing pains of having a new coach and 2 new starters, or should we be concerned about what's the progress of Blake Griffin's game?
Well, I think they're going to be fine. Doc wants to put in. The thing that really made Doc's teams great in Boston was they were so great defensively. And he's trying to put in, he's installing that defense, that protect the lane defense, and so far you don't see it. And I'm not sure that it's going to work the same way with the Clippers that it worked with the Celtics. The Celtics were really strong up the middle defensively, especially before the last couple of years. When it was Rondo and Kevin Garnett and Kendrick Perkins, that gave them 3 guys who could really, really hold the fort, who were really good defensively, and they could make up for what Paul Pierce and Ray Allen, didn't do. They could scheme out everything else. The Clippers are playing kind of an offensive lineup. If they wanted to be a better defensive team, they could start Matt Barnes and bring J.J. Redick off the bench. J.J. Redick's playing really well, but he's an offensive player. So, I think Blake's going to be fine. With Blake, he'll get to be a great player the day that he starts knocking down that 15-foot shot regularly. I think we're still at the point where, he raises up and takes a 15-foot shot and the defense says, okay, we've done our job, If he starts making that, that's what made Karl Malone great. That's what made Elton Brand great. They were big, strong guys, but all of a sudden when they got that perimeter shot and you couldn't, so that you couldn't fall back off them, that's when they became unguardable.
Mark, I look at the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they're off to a 3-0 start, and I see what Kevin Love has done in the first 3 games of the season. I just start to say, finally, this is what we've all anticipated for so long. We've known the talent is there. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. If they continue to make a run and we start to hear maybe grumblings that, we'll see if Love is still a possible guy to remain there long term, do you still think they would explore opportunities to trade him if the price were right?
I think I don't know, but I would expect it to be the kind of thing where they would deny it, till the end. The only way it would happen would be if Love would come out and tell them, I'm not coming back.
Right.
He's already, gotten himself in trouble with Minnesota people for kind of hinting that he's got problems, with management. And so, he's rescinded that. Now he's, very much into I love Minnesota. And, they got a really interesting team because, that tandem of him and Ricky Rubio, I mean, they are really special, and it's, and they don't get the hype that players get other places. But, I mean, there's 2 guys that you really love to watch play.
I got a chance to watch them against the Knicks, and I got to tell you, they're they're this year's Golden State Warriors. A great story, good offensive system with Adelman. I don't see why they can't make the playoffs, and actually, if they get hot, maybe go on a mini run.
They looked really good last year, and then they started losing all their players. And this year, they look even better. Rubio was just coming back last year, and he was really, it took him a while to get over the hump. But he's really a special player, and I say that as somebody who really, I just completely doubted him, and I'm friends with David Kahn, and when David was going to take him, I begged him not to. and the first time I saw him in the NBA, I said, oh, okay, I was really wrong. Because this guy is really a gifted playmaker. He's one of these. He's a once-in-a-generation playmaker. Like Magic, like Jason Kidd. Guys like just don't come along very often.
Mark, with Golden State, Curry has always shown a remarkable ability to shoot the basketball. I think you could say the same with Klay Thompson. But Curry continues to turn the ball over early in the season. Is that something that we should be a little bit more concerned about, or is it something that it's early season rust? He'll start to get the offensive game going, and we know that Stephen Curry will be the Stephen Curry that we saw from last year, where he turned out to be really a special player.
Well, I think he really is a special player. As a shooter, he's just beyond anything we've ever seen. When he gets hot, it's like nothing you've ever seen before. No Reggie Miller, no Larry Bird, no nothing. When he's hot, he's in a zone that nobody's ever been in. That said, and Klay Thompson, is quite a really good shooter. They may turn out to be the greatest shooting backcourt that ever was, and they're already the fastest triggers. You never see anybody, put the ball up from as far out as fast as those 2 guys. But they're an offensive team, and to win anything big, they're going to have to get by teams that are bigger and are defensive teams, like San Antonio and Oklahoma City. And I'll believe that they can do that when I see it.
Well, what's funny about that is I think that, first of all, you have Iggy, who's an elite defender. I think Klay Thompson is well on his way to being an elite defender. I think Bogut is one of those kind of guys. Harrison Barnes has shown flashes of at least athletic ability that could be a good defender. So I think they're not that far off from being that defensive team and actually making that next step to at least the conference finals.
I think they're, as you say, several of them are good defenders, but they're not, their scheme isn't the defensive scheme. They're having so much fun going up and down and scoring 116 points, that they don't really bear down on defense. To really bear down on defense, it really helps to have some control over the pace of the game. Now they like the pace fast. You really got to be special to be a really good defensive team and play fast. We've seen it before. Tark's Vegas teams, they used to be like that. They used to play much better defense than anybody knew because they made the game go up and down so fast. But at the pro level, it's really kind of hard to do. When you go up and down, you just naturally get spread out, all over the floor. The good defensive teams now are the ones that fall back on the lane, and to do that, it really helps to play slow.
My fun one for you, and again, we're joined by Mark Heisler with the Orange County Register and the Sheridan Hoops here on NBA Courtside. When evaluating the top four teams in the East, I think most people will still take a look at the Heat, at Chicago, at Indiana, and at Brooklyn. When you take a look at those teams 1 through 4, how do you see it playing out as far as top four in the East?
Well, I thought Chicago would be really, really solid, and I still do. But Derrick Rose, I think, is right now through 4 games. I think he's shot 14 for 58. Well, we can't be all that surprised if he's really rusty. I would be very surprised if he didn't go back to being Derrick Rose. They're a great defensive team. Now, there's a team that lines up and knocks your socks off every night. So I think they'll be right there. I think Indiana will be right there. I think it's going to be real close between those 3, Indiana, Chicago, and Miami. I don't have Brooklyn as being quite that good. I like all their individual parts, but you put them all together, I see a lot of age and a very slow team.
Yeah.
Maybe not, maybe they need some guys who are less famous and, more like worker bees.
Yeah, I agree. I think that for some reason, even though on paper the Nets should be considered up there, there's something about the way they plot and they play when you watch them compared to Miami that I just don't see them competing. And now let me tell you this. I think that Miami, I get into arguments a lot about this. I think that Chicago is the best suited to beat Miami because they're the only team that has 2 elite wing defenders in Butler and Dang, whereas a team like Indiana has Paul George. And then, Lance Stevenson, I don't think is an elite defender, and certainly not Danny Granger. So, what are your thoughts on that? Who's the best matchup for the Heat?
Well, I think they're both. I really think they're both really tough matchups. When I think of how teams play defense, I think more of the coach and the scheme. And both of those teams, Indiana and Chicago, they're both really solid, lane protecting, big, physical teams. They kind of play to their defense, and you just don't score a whole lot of points on them. You don't run away from them. You don't open up the game the way Miami would like to open up the game. So, I think they're both. We saw how tough a matchup Chicago was for them last year in the playoffs. They were giving them a run for their lives without Derrick Rose. If they'd have had Derrick Rose, if they'd had the real Derrick Rose, I think they would have brushed him aside. I think brushed him aside. They would have beat him. And because they really had, they had the Heat fighting for their lives in that second round.
And Derrick Rose says that this is the best Bulls team he's played on. I don't know if I agree with him. I think a couple of years ago when you had arguably the best defensive bench in the NBA from a couple of years ago with the bench mob, and I worry a little bit about their depth at the center position if Noah isn't healthy consistently. But certainly it's going to match up well for the Bulls, and the Pacers and the Heat come down in the East, and certainly an entertaining West as well. Please do follow our guest Mark Heisler on Twitter at Mark Heisler. You can read him in the Orange County Register and also on Sheridan Hoops. Mark, it's always a pleasure to talk hoops with you, my friend. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That is Mark Heisler. We'll take a quick break. Be back with the final segment of NBA Courtside. Do not go anywhere. Heisler, and, of course, Bob Cooney with the Philadelphia 76ers, their beat reporter for the Philadelphia Daily News. Follow him on Twitter at BobCooney76. Hey, Coach, it's time to introduce a new segment to Courtside. We're going to call it the Coach Nick's three-man weave. Basically, you're going to give us three big things to watch out for this week, things that need to be on our radar. You ready to go?
I'm ready. Here we go. The first one is what will be Derrick Rose's breakout game, and I don't think it's to look very far on the schedule to look at the Utah Jazz playing them on Friday. His old teammate John Lucas has started 2 of their 3 games, and if that's the case, look out NBA, look out world.
Uh-oh.
We will have a breakout game by Derrick Rose as he torches not only John Lucas but potentially Jamal Tinsley, and then Alec Burke might be the only guy that can come in there and give him any kind of run.
There you go. And then also anything on the second part of the three-man weave?
We have number 2, the Sixers. What can they look like at the end of the second week of the season after starting out surprisingly 3-0? And looking at their week, they're probably going to get hammered against the Golden State Warriors tonight on Monday. But then they have a little bit of a Washington Wizards break, perhaps, and then a home-and-home with Cleveland. So very conceivable they could be 6-1 and only 1 win off of the Bobcats' 11-12 season. That was famous because they were really trying to tank for that number 1 spot and then didn't even get it.
And if you look at, I'm trying to figure out what the over-under is for tonight's Golden State-Philly game, and I think if you might have to look over 200 for tonight's going to be a nice little track meet. And the final portion of the three-man weave, Coach Nick, is?
We're going to tell you a great steak to get in Los Angeles. Why not? And it's a little-known place. It's been around for over 50 years. It's called Taylor's Steakhouse in the middle of Koreatown. And I don't think it was Koreatown when they founded it. So it's a strange little steakhouse that would be in the middle of a strange place in L.A., but old school, like exposed brick and wood.
Oh, those places are the best.
And yeah, and you know what? Are the steaks like the highest quality in the world? No, but they're juicy, they're flavorful, the surroundings are good. They got onion rings, they have French onion soup. There's nothing you can complain about with Taylor Steakhouse in L.A.
Taylor Steakhouse. All right, I'll keep that in mind next time I'm out in the Los Angeles area. I like the sort of hidden under-the-radar steakhouses. I think a lot of people feel like you have to go with the big names, and rightfully so. Morton's and a Gibson's, particularly where I'm from in the Chicago area, is always a terrific choice. But if you find a good I don't want to say low quality, but a good hole-in-the-wall steak joint, you're in business.
Hey, I'm from Chicago, and we'd be remiss not to mention Ditka's, which might not even be open anymore, but that was also the place to go when you wanted a good steak.
Wait a minute. We've been working together all this time, and you two are from the Chicago area?
Yes, I am. I believe we talked about it, but either way, yes, I am. I grew up right near Wrigley Field.
Oh, that's right. It was part of our first initial conversations. There you go. Glad to know that I'm such a good listener with my co-host here. And finally, we're going to do one particular thing. It's called We Own the Week. Which NBA team has the best week ahead? And Coach, my team is going to be the San Antonio Spurs. They got 3 games this week. They are at Denver on Tuesday. The Nuggets are 0-2 to start the season. And then they're home versus the Phoenix Suns on Wednesday. Of course, that we know that the Phoenix Suns, they're not as good as their 2-1 record would indicate. And then Dragic has a sprained ankle, so he might miss that game. And then they host the Warriors on Friday. And as San Antonio showed last year, they're good enough to beat Golden State. And also, I think they're going to force Curry into a lot of different turnovers.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go with that, too. It's a great call. And everything you said, I agree with wholeheartedly.
So there you go. And then finally, before we go, for next week's episode, go up and hit us up on Twitter. You can follow Coach Nick at bballbreakdown. You can follow me at Benny Heiss. And if you have questions for Coach Nick, and I'm not sure why you'd have a question for me, but if you do, go ahead and shoot something at us with the hashtag Courtside, and the best questions we will go and read on next week's episode up on YouTube and also on iTunes. So there you go. Thanks again to Mark Heisler and also to Bob Cooney for joining us. Coach, it's been fun as always. We'll do it again next week.
You got it. Don't flip.
And no flopping.